My main fact this week is that the platypus does not have a stomach. It goes straight from their esophagus to their small intestine. It appears that the ancestors of platypuses? Platypi? Platypodes? We'll stick with platypus for now. The ancestors of platypus had stomachs, but lost them millions of years ago. Today we see that the platypus genes have disappeared for stomach functions like the gastric proton pump, the enzyme that acidifies the stomach, as well as many of the genes for pepsinogens, which are digestive enzymes that break down proteins. So why did they lose their stomachs? That is a great question. The theory that I read is that millions of years ago, the diets of platypus changed in a way so that having a stomach with acids and enzymes just wasn't as useful. For example, a lot of the food that platypus eats is basic, as in the opposite of acidic. Animals with shells or exoskeletons often contain calcium carbonate, which is basic. Animals with shells and exoskeletons just happen to make up a large part of the diet of platypus. Anyways, if your diet is basic, that's going to neutralize a lot of your stomach acid, which is a problem because stomach acid is actually very energy intensive to produce. That, combined with the fact that they can clearly digest their food just fine without a stomach, means that maybe platypus were better off without stomach acid. And pepsinogens work best in acid, so once stomach acid is gone, maybe pepsinogens go away too. Okay, so how can platypus digest food without a stomach? Or without teeth? They don't have teeth, by the way. Well, technically platypus do have teeth when they're like babies, but eventually they lose these teeth and instead develop grinding pads made of keratin, the same material that makes up our nails and hair. Wikipedia calls these grinding pads keratodontes. Anyways, these grinding pads are used to grind food very finely, which makes it easier to digest. The small intestine is also longer than in most other mammals, which gives food more time to be absorbed or whatever. Also, the platypus has gut bacteria, which helps it break down its food as well. Finally, the diet of platypus just contains a lot of soft-bodied foods like worms, mollusks, and insect larvae, so their food is mostly easier to break down in the first place. Since we're talking a lot about all of the things that platypus don't have, despite feeding milk to their young, platypus also don't have nipples. Instead of nipples, milk is released through pores in the mother's skin, which then pools in the grooves of the mother's abdomen. Sometimes you hear that platypuses sweat milk, but I think that's not technically what's happening. I think platypuses actually can't sweat at all. Anyways, I guess oozing milk into your folds and flaps for your children to lap up is actually less hygienic than letting them suck on a plain old nipple. So platypus milk contains powerful antimicrobial components. And it's thought that maybe the antimicrobial proteins found in platypus milk could help us one day to develop new antibiotics, which is cool, I guess, if not a little gross. So we've been talking a lot about the things that platypus don't have, but what's something cool that they do have? Venomous ankle barbs. Male platypus have ankle barbs that are venomous, especially during the mating season. I guess when competing for females, the males will fight each other and potentially stab each other with their venomous barbs. The barbs are also useful for defense. Many animals do prey on platypus, like crocodiles. Anyways, now platypus venom isn't considered deadly to humans, but it is considered extremely painful. After being stabbed with venom, people have reported feeling pain for months afterwards. And also, painkillers, including morphine, are ineffective at reducing pain. One anecdote I read was about an Australian soldier named Keith Payne, who described being struck on the hand by a platypus spur while trying to rescue a platypus. Now, Payne, for context, Payne had fought in the Vietnam War, and at one point in an attack from Vietnamese troops, he was struck with shrapnel from a grenade on his head, arms, and hands. He was later given the Victoria Cross, the highest award given in the Australian military, for assisting many other men despite himself being injured. Anyways, Payne described being struck by a platypus spur as more painful than being struck by a grenade shrapnel. There's also a woman named Jenny Forward who recently was struck by a platypus spur. She described it as being more painful than childbirth. Luckily, I think it's actually not very common to be stabbed by a platypus. I think they're actually normally pretty shy, so that's good. I think one of the most famous weird facts about platypus is that they lay eggs despite being mammals. Like in science class, right? When you're learning about mammals, the teacher says mammals don't lay eggs, except for platypus and echidnas. One thing that I think is overlooked about this is that this means that platypus have cloacae, which is unusual for mammals. One cloaca is used for feces, urine, intercourse, and laying eggs. Gross. Anyways, only a few mammals have cloacae. For example, platypus, golden moles, marsupial moles, tenrecs, and echidnas. So what else do we know about platypus? We know that they glow blue under UV light for some reason. We know that they have 10 sex chromosomes. I think males have 5 X's and 5 Y's. I'm not even getting into that because I don't understand it. Oh, here's a fun fact. In the television show Phineas and Ferb, the titular Phineas and Ferb have a pet platypus named Perry, who's also a secret agent. That's probably a weird sentence if you've never seen the show. Anyways, the creators of the show didn't know what the platypus sounded like, so they just made a sort of purring noise for Perry that sounds like this. Just by coincidence, that's actually pretty similar to what a platypus sounds like. So that's kind of weird. So this is interesting. The platypus hunts not by sight, sound, or smell. Actually, whenever a platypus dives into the water, it closes its eyes, ears, and nose, which I guess it can do. The platypus predominantly hunts using its sixth sense, electroreception. The platypus has receptors on its beak that can detect electrical signals. I guess it roots around in the mud and muck at the bottom of bodies of water, and it feels for electrical signals produced by the muscle contractions of small prey. Platypus also have mechanoreceptors on their bills, which detect changes in pressure and motion, which they also use to hunt. Echidnas also use electroreception, although the electroreception of platypus are stronger. Echidnas are really making my platypus video less impressive. I do have an interesting fact about echidna penis. Echidnas have a 4-headed penis, which I'm not going to show because I don't want to. You can look it up yourself. It's pretty freaky looking. Anyways, each time the echidna has sex, only 2 heads on one side releases semen, and it alternates which side releases semen every time it copulates. I don't know why. Well, I guess that's as good a place as any to end the video.